Continuing on with Last Dance with a Cowboy by Sara Richardson, best-selling New York Times author. I do believe I said that right. National best-selling author. I apologize. But it's a Silverado Lake novel. I'm sure I deserve every bit of your brother's dislike. His eyes barely grazed hers, but the quick look was enough to soften her knees. Why, oh why, had she kissed him? It had been so easy to find herself in his arms again, opening to each other the way they used to. A tentative silence stretched out between them, a beat too long, while August examined the Crusher's control panel. He didn't know what to say either. Luckily, she didn't have a problem with making small talk. So have you fixed a lot of the Crushers during your career? Whatever she did, she had to steer clear of discussing the kiss. She had to pretend like it never had happened, like it didn't affect her. A few. The man took a knee and looked at the underside of the machine. I've pretty much done everything there is to do at a vineyard. Had to work my way up over here over the years. Leela watched while he stood and turned on the machine, taking a few seconds to listen to the horrible grinding before turning it off again. Do you like what you're doing now for Kingston, the best of all the jobs you've done? She couldn't help but be curious about him. Back when they were dating, she never would have assumed he'd been an executive, spending much of his time on the business end of things. He always loved the outdoors, the hands-on work he'd done with his father at the ranch. I wouldn't say that I like what I'm doing now the best. August seemed to be intent on avoiding her gaze as she was avoiding his. I like being in the vineyards, planting, tending, harvesting, and I recently made some of my own wine too. You made wine? Sam appeared in the doorway again. We don't need any help making wine around here. Her brother shoved a large toolbox into August's hands. You might have had some fancy job and make a lot more money than us, but we have our own way of doing things, and that's not going to change. Layla almost chastised Sam for being so rude, but she couldn't blame him for feeling threatened. August's very presence has a reminder of the deal she'd made. He might not mean to, but the man was a threat to all of them. I don't plan on taking over, August said easily. He set the toolbox on the ground and dug around until he found a screwdriver. Making wine is more of a hobby for me. You have nothing to worry about. Her brother grunted something inaudible and then said more loudly, I have to go meet a group of harvest volunteers at the cafe in town. If you excuse me. He made it out of the door with a few long strides. Sorry, Leela moved in closer to August. He's the only one here besides us who knows the real situation. I think he's worried. She knew how often she woke up at night with her heart racing. Maybe Sam was better at hiding the stress than she was. I get it. August unscrewed a few bolts on the machine and then pulled a stainless steel panel off it so to reveal more gears and wires. Neither of you have any reason to trust me. We don't have any choice but to trust you. That was what it had come to terms with. She didn't have to trust him with her heart. She had to trust him with her mind, with her business. I hope to prove myself trustworthy. He stepped away from the machine and pulled off his Henley. Whoa, she hadn't meant to react, but hadn't been prepared for him to turn loose of his clothes. What are you doing? There's a lot of grease here. Don't want to ruin my shirt. He tossed the shirt onto the table and selected a wrench from the toolbox. At least she was pretty sure he had a wrench. It had gotten difficult to focus on anything besides the rippling muscles in his back. Augie had always had a well-defined physique, but his shoulders had grown broader, and his skin had a rugged quality. He must spend at least some hours outdoors. Hey, August glanced over his shoulder. Can you find me a pair of pliers? What, huh? Oh, yeah, pliers. She managed to rip her gaze off his body. Yes, pliers, no problem. Her quaking hands fumbled with the tools in the toolbox. Pliers, here you go. She thrust a tool into his hand and then backed away so quickly that she tripped on a box that Sam had left on the floor. Oopsies. Leela steadied herself before she fell on her butt. What was wrong with her? He offered her his hand. You okay? Yep, I'm good. She laughed awkwardly, still a klutz, and still a sucker for August's body. All right, then. August went back to work on the machine. Leela watched his hands work. Those same large hands had held her face tenderly while he kissed her only a few hours ago. The memory sent her stomach gently rolling over again. The man tinkered with wires and gears, taping things, tightening parts with a wrench. It shocked her how much he resembled the old August, especially when he focused on something. He left his eyes still narrowed slightly, and he continued to set his jaw with determination. He gave the task all the attention, stepping back a few times as though to bring the whole picture into view. Some of the parts are wearing down, he said, after at least a 15-minute of tinkering and working, but I think we can make it at least last another season or so. He set down the wrench, separating the examining wires. I know a guy. We can order new parts and I can rewire the motor. I've replaced the guts on one of these things before. I'm sure that'll take care of the problem for now. August finally pulled back on his shirt. Thank God. August finally pulled back on his shirt. Thank the good Lord. Let me worry about this. He closed up the toolbox. Don't give it another thought. Before she could cut off the rise of emotion, tears burned in her eyes. Relief, pure, utter relief. Thank you. God, it was awful to have him here, to be reminded of what she lost every day. But it helped, too. She had been on her own for a long time. Now, like it or not, August was here to share her burdens, but she couldn't let herself get used to having him around. Chapter 11. It took everything in him not to wrap his arms around Leila. Keeping his distance when those tears made her eyes glow required every shred of discipline and rapidly fraying self-control August could muster. But if he had pulled her in close, his lips would inevitably find hers again. His hands would settle on her hips and draw her to him. He inhaled her in that Leila scent he'd always loved, and this time he wouldn't stop himself from exploring where a single kiss might have taken them, now that they didn't have to sneak around behind the grown-ups' backs. Hunger growled through him. He could still taste her. He might never stop tasting her. I'm sorry, I have no idea why I'm getting emotional. The woman who had currently had his pulse stuttering grunted with frustration and dabbed at her eyes with her shirt sleeves. So you'll order the new part for the crusher? Yeah, August looked away so his gaze wouldn't keep falling on her mouth, so he could think of something else to say that would distract him from the slow swelling ache she made him feel. Okay, then, that's settled. She stalked away from him and started to straighten up the mess, the measuring cups and stemless wine glasses and scattered notes of paper on the nearby table, as though she couldn't stand the mess her brother had left. She always liked order, even back in high school. She used to tidy everything up. Do you remember when you did an intervention and cleaned my room? The memory hit the razor-sharp clarity. He must have been a junior that year, which would have made her a sophomore. Leila peered over her shoulder with one eyebrow cocked. Your room was always a complete mess. Someone had to do something before the mess resulted in a natural disaster. He grinned at her, a quick rebuttal. The woman was never at a loss for words. It was one thing that he loved most about her. She had a response for everything. You showed up with a whole bucket of cleaning supplies and kicked me out. He tried to distract her with a low, slimmering kiss that afternoon, but Leila had always been the kind of woman who couldn't be diverted when she had a mission. Someone had to do an intervention. Leila gathered up a few crumpled paper towels and tossed them into the trash can. I found an old banana peel underneath your bed that day, and don't get me started on the dirty dish collection in your closet. Playfulness sparkled in her eyes the same way it used to when she'd tease him with a wink from across the diner table when he dined with her family. I don't know how Jane lived with you and the Wes all of those years. Yeah, she had it pretty tough. And his sister never let them forget the way they tortured her with their very presence. You might be surprised to learn that I'm actually kind of a neat freak these days. Leila eyes dulled suddenly. Yes, well, neither of us is the same person that we were back then. She sidestepped him and started to stack empty canisters on a shelf. Maybe her avoidance should have made it easier for him to keep his distance from her. but he couldn't seem to tear himself to take his eyes off of her. No, we're not the same people. She had grown more beautiful, stronger, sure of herself, and yet even with all the strength and capability, she still had the warmth about her smile, this authenticity that he never encountered in anyone else. But that's a good thing. He hadn't meant for his voice to drop. We'd both grown up, but that didn't stop him from feeling the same way that he had been 16 years old and had taken her hand for the first time. Layla stilled, let her back turned to him. He had her attention. He might not get this opportunity again if things were different. No, that wasn't quite right. If I were different, I wouldn't have stopped kissing you this afternoon. His heart clanged against his ribs like a warning bell, but he needed to say this to her. I can't pretend I don't want you, Lee, but I also can't pretend I deserve you. He had never let himself ask the what if question, but being here with her, he couldn't avoid wondering what if his father hadn't died? What if he hadn't gone adrift in his life? Would he and Leela be standing here stealing kisses away from the watchful eyes of the kids they talked about having? Slowly Lay turned to him, not fully, but enough that he could see the flush on her face. I should go. Call Sam. She made a sudden movement in the direction of the door. I need to tell him that you're going to fix the crusher. He said too much, again, but she had to know he hadn't walked away from kissing her because he wanted to. I'll talk to Sam. August made it to the door first and opened it for her. Leela paused on her way outside. You're going to talk to him? Yeah, I'll go find him at the cafe. He and Sam needed to clear the disgruntled air between them if he was going to be able to help the winery. And he'd best steer clear of Lay for the rest of the day anyway. He wasn't doing either of them any favors bringing up that kiss that couldn't happen again. Okay, if you're sure that you want to talk to Sam. She walked with him to the edge of the parking lot. Let me know how it goes. Her scrunched forehead made it clear how she thought a meeting between her brother and him would go. I will. He gave her a wave and settled in his truck, cursing himself for getting distracted during a business mission. He never had problems keeping things professional until he'd come back to Valentino Bella's. It was the memories, the constant reminders of how good they'd been together once. He navigated the switchback where he and Layla had slid off the road not long after she gotten her license. He inhaled deeply as though he could breathe in her memory. He let her drive her truck for the first time. Maybe not the best idea he'd ever had since it had snowed the night before. She'd taken the turn too fast and they'd done a right into the edge of the vineyard. 3 seconds had seemed like 5 years while the wheels spun, and when they come to a stop, still on the mountain and not plunged off the cliff, he released the seatbelt to make sure she was okay. Then he kissed her with all the fear and desperation that had churned into him. And they stayed there in the cab of his truck, kissing for a good 30 minutes before finally digging out of the snow. And there he went again, wandering back into the past. No more thoughts, no more memories. To keep the cafe, he kept his mind clear and parked in front of the Silverado Lake's most popular hangout. At least he shouldn't run into any memories here. Jane's friend Beth and her husband had completely renovated the old diner, keeping some of the charm but making it look like a whole new establishment. Whitewashing the brick, adding lacquered black shutters to the windows. The inside had completely changed too, with new flooring, new tables, and a new counter that ran nearly the whole length of the restaurant. August entered the establishment, scanning the crowd. Augie, Beth waved from behind the espresso machine. Hey, good to see you. Anything new on the wedding planning front? She called loudly. Are you going to elope? Was it him, or did the entire place quiet in anticipation for his answer? No news yet. He approached the counter so everyone in the restaurant wouldn't get in on this conversation. I don't mean to nag you. I love weddings and all, is all. Beth flickered some levers on the machine, releasing a hiss of steam into the air. But you two are totally right. You should enjoy being engaged too. She sprayed some whipped cream on some elaborate coffee drink and slid it to a customer he didn't recognize a few seats away. Then she leaned over the counter across from him. Speaking of engagements, how did you propose anyway? No one seems to know anything. There was a good reason for that. He and Layla hadn't even thought to go over that proposal story. Oh well, it was great. He had always thought he would officially propose to Leela in the vineyards, just the two of them. No public gestures, no pomp and circumstance, just a simple, intimate moment they could share together. Kind of like when he'd given her the promise ring, but that was what she would want. He had no idea. You know what? He finally said, I should let her tell you the story. The prospect of hearing the details from Leela seemed to thrill the woman. I'd love to hear the story from Leela. Maybe I'll ask her and Jane to meet me for coffee. I need some girl time anyway. That'd be perfect. Then he'd be able to warn his pretend fiancée ahead of time so she could come up with something to say. Leela needs some time away from work too. Or maybe she needed time away from him. I'm sure she won't enjoy time with me half as much as she enjoys her time with you, Beth said with a wink. That was a debacle. I'll let her know to expect your call. He glanced around. I'm really here to see Sam, though. Sure, he is back booth around the corner. She pointed to the other side of the restaurant. They had just finished up their harvest meeting. Great, thanks. August made his way around the tables and turned the corner. Sam watched him walk all the way across the room, but said nothing when he got there. August wasn't sure how the man had perfected the ominous stare growing up with Papa and Nana, two of the friendliest people he ever met. Can I sit? He asked when it became clear Sam wasn't going to speak. Sure. Lila's brother started to scoot out of the booth. I was just leaving. You should stay for a few minutes, August said across from him. We need to talk. Sam sat taller and gazed at him with an unreadable expression. Though they gotten along okay back when he'd been dating Leela, August wouldn't say they'd been friends. I can fix the crusher. August met the man's dark eyes. I'll put a rush order in on the parts and hopefully can have it up and running by next week. Great. He started to slide out of the booth again. Hold up. This wasn't working. As the winemaker, Sam was one of the most important employees at Valentino Bella's, and yet August hadn't even had a full conversation with him since arriving. They had to get past this personal issues for the good of the winery. I know you hate me for leaving all those years ago, and I don't blame you. But we have to be on the same team right now. I'm trying to help Leela save the winery. We're all going to have to work together. I don't hate you because you left. Sam shook his head, a silent lament of August's idiocy. Hell, I don't even hate you. I hate what you did to my sister. I hate that she waited so long for you and you didn't even have the decency to call her. I hate how many times she cried over you. Each statement wrenched his heart, sinking his hopes for ever redeeming himself. I hate that she still loves you, the man mumbled. No, August stopped him right there. She doesn't love me. She can't. Years passed. He wasn't worthy of her love. If you really believe that, you don't know Layla's heart, Sam continued to glare at him. She's the most loyal person walking this earth. I swear she's more like Nana than she is like her own mom. Yes, Leela resembled Nana who never gave up on anyone, Nana who had been in love with the same man since she was been 15 years old. He almost opened his mouth to deny that Leela could still feel anything for him, but his jaw locked. Was the connection he felt to her? Did it come from feelings that had never really fully dissolved? It didn't matter. I don't deserve her love. Finally, something that we agree on, Sam muttered. Unfortunately, deserving her love doesn't matter. If she doesn't love you anymore, this wouldn't be so hard on her. Having you here, she wouldn't care. How hard was this for her? He hadn't bothered to ask. A heaviness pressed against his ribs, tempting him to run away from this conversation. After a lengthy silence, Sam spoke again. You want to know the worst part about what you did? She really believed you would come back. She had faith in you. And now she doesn't have faith in anyone. August clenched his fist, but he couldn't fault the man for telling the truth. He couldn't fault the man for trying to protect his sister from more pain. Sam cared about Leela, and August had to respect that. Coming here had been a mistake. He should have forced harder. He should have turned down the potential promotion. Staying away would have been better for Lee. On some level, though, he wanted to see her. He hadn't admitted that truth to himself, but there it was. I only have one question for you. Are you going to stick around this time? Sam eyed him as though he already knew the answer. August couldn't bring himself to utter a no, but he couldn't stay. He couldn't open his heart to that kind of intimacy, not when he might lose her someday. He couldn't go through that kind of pain again. Sam slid out of the booth and stood, because if you're only going to leave her again, you need to back off and make sure she knows where you stand. Don't you dare mess with her. August, it's not fair. Chapter 12. Leela tried to focus on her computer screen so she could finish up the inventory, but her gaze kept wandering to the door. Yet again, August hadn't shown up to the office. When she first learned Kingston had sent Augie out, she thought she would have to give him assignments to keep him away from her. But he was pretty good at staying away all on his own. Since fixing the crusher, he hadn't graced them with his presence once in the last 3 weeks. Sure, he'd sent plenty of emails detailing his work for the upcoming event, but she was starting to wonder if he would ever come back. August sure has made himself scarce, her grandmother mused innocently across the room. I feel like I haven't seen him in weeks. And the phone's about to die, so we're going to have to stop right there.